Good morning and welcome to this decision session for the Executive Member for Finance, Performance, Major Projects, Human Rights, Equalities and Inclusion. And I always get those in the wrong order. We'll start with declarations of interest. I do not have any declarations of interest. Then we have the minutes of the last meeting on the 12th of October, which I'm happy to approve and will sign. And we move swiftly on to public participation. We've got one speaker who's joining us remotely and one speaker who wasn't able to attend in person but has sent a statement which I will read out. So I think we go to our public speaker joining us remotely first.
Good morning.
Morning, Flick. You're very welcome. As you know, you have 3 minutes, so over to you.
In anticipation of the executive member accepting this report in full, I would like to start by thanking both her and the Assistant Director for all their hard work on this policy paper, and very importantly for involving disabled people from the outset in its co-production. As we say in the disability rights movement, nothing about us without us. The key to a fundamental shift towards a social model understanding of the mechanisms of disablement in our society within this council is disability equality training. Without it, nothing can fundamentally change, and the need is great. Let me provide some evidence. Having recently witnessed some uncomfortable scenes between officers and disabled people at consultation events, there is clearly awkwardness felt by some members of staff who clearly feel ill-equipped when confronted by people whose differences they are unfamiliar with. Ableism is learned behaviour into which we are all socialised from an early age in this society. It's why so many newly disabled people struggle with their own identity and internalised depression. At the next level up, we have examples of inappropriate use of language used by both officers and members in meetings. For example, often heard is suffering from in relation to conditions or impairments, which is a medicalised value judgment of our lives as disabled people. Also often heard is the term able-bodied instead of non-disabled. It reiterates that the perceived problem lies within the functioning of the body and is not consistent with identifying barriers as per the social model. Ultimately, until the social model is fully understood and embedded into practice, we will continue to see equality impact assessments that are entirely wanting as they fail to properly identify likely impacts for disabled people. See the EQIA on the papers for Thursday's executive on waste management, for example. The social model is a political model and is effective in its simplicity as a tool for change. Impairment we cannot change, and that is personal. Disability, however, is political and can be changed. But for those of us who are students of it, next level debate is whether disablement is socially constructed or socially created. I am firmly in the latter camp, believing that an economic analysis lies at the root of all disabling barriers. Whilst fully aware of the dire financial situation in which this council finds itself, a failure to identify the appropriate funds for disability equality training across the whole authority will result in business as usual and nothing will change. I implore you not to allow financial pressures to curtail progress. It is simply not enough to recognise our oppression. Training is the tried and tested mechanism to move to people's thinking from a medicalised view of us towards a barriers approach to inclusion. Disabled people cannot continue to be at the bottom of the heap when it comes to priorities. I urge the executive to muster the political will to find a way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Flick. That's spot on 3 minutes and really appreciate your comments. I'm now going to go on to read the statement from Kate Revilius. Apologies for not being able to attend the meeting and say this in person, and thank you to the chair for agreeing to read my statement out. I'd like to welcome this report and the hugely important policy changes that it will help to drive. As the report notes, actions to address the climate and biodiversity crisis can impact disabled people in different ways and have unintended consequences. It is essential that City of York Council's climate change strategy recognises this and that the action plan explores the consequences and works to mitigate any adverse impacts. Myself and Councillor Kent would welcome the opportunity to work with the York Access Forum to ensure that these issues are discussed at an early stage and suitable solutions are co-created. At paragraph 52 of the report, under the section on environment and climate action, it states the following: it will also be incredibly important to balance any moves to more sustainable methods of transport and construction with people's access needs. There is often a focus on changes to the built environment and travel, which impact negatively on disabled people. The Council will work to avoid any form of eco-ableism. I believe this statement is too narrow in its focus and that the term eco-ableism is inappropriate. It's a term that is being used to whip up a culture war and doesn't feel appropriate in a council report. Environment and climate action can bring positives as well as negative impacts to disabled people. For example, the need to better insulate homes is beneficial to many disabled people who may spend more time at home and suffer more from the cold. It is not just transport and construction that have an impact on disabled people, and the impact is not just limited to access. I'd appreciate an amendment to this statement to something along the following lines. It will also be incredibly important to assess the impact of all climate and environment related actions on disabled people. The Council will work to avoid adverse impacts and to ensure that appropriate mitigations are put in place, whilst continuing to recognise the extreme threat that the climate and biodiversity crises present to humanity. Thank you for listening and taking this into account. And I thank Councillor Revilius for sending the statement in, and obviously welcome the intention to work more closely and to bring together City of York Council to work as one council on issues that have the potential to disable people. This entire report is aimed at avoiding and challenging ableism wherever and whenever we encounter it, and that will mean difficult changes to our way of thinking and working together across the board. Just as when we engaged in work on anti-racism, we should never shy away from naming and discussing ableism, but instead we should find ways to work together to address ableism when we encounter it. I do think we should reflect on the use of the specific term eco-ableism, as driving division is not the aim of this paper, and perhaps we should use the overarching term ableism instead. I'm now going to go over to Laura Williams to present the paper.
Thank you. I know you've read the report, obviously, but I will just give some brief background for anybody who hasn't. So a meeting of council in October 2022, the motion Equality for Disabled People was presented. It was unanimously carried and the council resolved to adopt the social model of disability and embed it into every area of its working, operation, policy and practice, including how it communicates. So the purpose of this report is to set out a clear policy statement as to what the social model of disability actually means in terms of how the council will communicate, engage and deliver services for those who live, work, study in or visit the city. The report also contains brief update on the work of York Access Forum and the move to appoint a chair who is independent of the council to take that work forward. You are asked to approve the policy statement on implementing the social model of disability, to commit the council to providing both elected members and officers with appropriate disability equality training, and to note the York Access Forum update, the terms of reference and next steps in appointing a new forum chair. I'd also like to just briefly thank all of those, including our public speaker, who've given up their time and engaged with us in producing both the report and the terms of reference. Your assistance is so valuable in ensuring that we're on the right path, and I'm really grateful for your support and constructive criticism.
Thanks very much, Laura. I am genuinely delighted to be making a decision on this today, and I know it's the result of work done by many people in the council and right across the city following the council motion back in 2022. I'm especially grateful to members of the York Disability Rights Forum, the Human Rights City Network, and members of the Access Forum who gave so much time to have input into this paper and into the developing of the terms of reference for the Access Forum itself. The experience we've had in York over the last few years teaches us just how far we need to go to avoid ableism and enable all who live or work in York or who visit our city to have equal access both to the built environment and all of the services and positive benefits that our city offers. Embedding the social model of disability is not easy. As a disabled person myself, I have been on my own journey of learning and understanding, having been conditioned all my life to perceive the world through a medical model lens. I do look forward to all of the challenges that will inevitably come as we work together to go on that journey, to use a social model of disability, to remove barriers and make our city better for everyone. And I'm delighted to approve all of the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Laura, for all your work on it and for bringing everyone together to get us in a position to truly embed the social model of disability in everything that we do. And there is no urgent business. So that's us done.